Science fiction isn't just about wild aliens, rubber suits, and flashy lasers. It's about crystal ball moments where filmmakers accidentally, or sometimes brilliantly, saw the real future. Forget the retro label. The 1960s sci-fi scene gave us eerie blueprints for the world we're living in now. Ever wondered how much of your daily life was already predicted by some old black and white flick? Stick around, because the truth is, yesterday's fantasy might be today's headline. Ready to spot the prophecy? Let's jump in. 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968. Imagine walking into a movie theater in 1968 and seeing a vision of space travel that looked so real, you'd think NASA snuck Stanley Kubrick the blueprints for the actual future. 2001, A Space Odyssey wasn't just another rocket-powered adventure. It's the godfather of cinematic prophecy, a movie that called its shots decades before the world could catch up. From the opening moments, you're hit with tech predictions that still feel fresh. There are video calls, long before FaceTime, flat, glowing tablets at every seat, basically the iPad, 40 years ahead of schedule. Commercial flights to space, with flight attendants in crisp uniforms and zero-gravity pen tricks. Even the AI, HAL 9000, is a digital assistant with personality and paranoia, eerily echoing the Alexa and Siri debates of today. What's even wilder is how much of Kubrick's vision came true, not because he was lucky, but because he obsessed over real science. He hired NASA advisors, grilled engineers, and demanded that every button, switch, and corridor make sense. The end result? Scientists, astronauts, and tech CEOs have all pointed to 2001 as the inspiration for everything from space stations to AI voice assistants. So next time you swipe your tablet or yell at your digital assistant, remember, you're living in a world Kubrick dreamed up. Prophecy, not fantasy. Now, let's see who else saw the future coming. Planet of the Apes, 1968. Beneath the makeup and mayhem, Planet of the Apes hides a brutal question. What happens if humanity's best ideas end up backfiring? This isn't just a story about talking apes with attitude. It's a nuclear-age nightmare, and a cautionary tale wrapped in an action-packed package. Charlton Heston's astronaut crash lands on what seems like an alien world, ruled by intelligent apes who ride horses and quote their own twisted scriptures. But the big twist isn't the monkey business. It's that this alien planet is actually a ruined Earth, devastated by humanity's own obsession with war and weapons. The film's big reveal, a shattered Statue of Liberty half buried in the sand, became one of cinema's most famous mic drops for a reason. But Planet of the Apes was more than a plot twist. It tackled real fears: genetic manipulation, species extinction, and the arms race. The movie wrestled with the ethics of science, the dangers of nuclear technology, and the arrogance of thinking humans are forever on top. Sound familiar? It should. In the decades since, debates about cloning, animal rights, and self-inflicted extinction have only gotten louder. Planet of the Apes wasn't just a hit with popcorn munchers. Scientists and ethicists still point to it as a pop culture warning. If you ever wondered how sci-fi could actually shape public debate, look no further. Sometimes the smartest prophets wear fur and throw a mean punch. Fahrenheit 451, 1966. What if the future's biggest threat wasn't a monster or a mad scientist, but a world where nobody reads anymore? That's the chilling premise of Fahrenheit 451, and it's even scarier now than when it first hit screens in 1966. Based on Ray Bradbury's classic, the film imagines a world where firemen aren't there to put out fires. They start them, torching every last book they find. Knowledge is dangerous, and independent thinking is outlawed. What do people do instead? They zone out on giant wall screens, binge shallow entertainment, and parrot slogans handed down by the powers that be. No need to reach for your phone. This movie called our information age before anyone even dreamed of the internet. Director Francois Truffaut plays it cool, layering in subtle details, credits that are spoken, not written, to remind you that reading itself is forbidden. Julie Christie turns in a dual performance, both as a glassy-eyed conformist and a rebellious book lover, two sides of a society caught between obedience and curiosity. What's truly wild is how much this movie predicted. Government censorship, reality TV, even the ways tech can isolate us from each other. The book people hiding in the woods, each memorizing a text, look a lot like the digital archivists and activists fighting to keep knowledge free today. If you ever scroll through endless feeds and wonder what's being lost in the noise, Fahrenheit 451 is a stark, prophetic wake-up call. Sometimes the scariest future is the one that feels way too close to home. Fantastic Voyage, 1966. Microscopic submarines, laser scalpels, and a race through the human bloodstream. No, it's not the latest Marvel plot. It's Fantastic Voyage, the movie that made inner space as thrilling as outer space and predicted a whole world of medical tech that's barely science fiction anymore. Here's the setup. A team of scientists shrinks down to microscopic size and gets injected into a human body, piloting a tiny sub through arteries and neurons to save a diplomat's life. The visuals are pure eye candy. Pulsating red tunnels, electric storms inside the brain, and immune system monsters that look like alien jellyfish. But look past the spectacle, and you'll see the birth of medical imaging, nanosurgery, and even remote-controlled robotics. The filmmakers went all in on accuracy, bringing in real-life doctors and specialists to consult on everything from the circulatory system to immune response. Isaac Asimov himself was hired to write the novelization and fix the movie's scientific flaws, a rare case where Hollywood wanted science to actually make sense. Decades later, surgeons are using cameras smaller than a grain of rice, and scientists are building bots that swim through your veins. Medical schools even used clips from this movie to teach students about human anatomy. Fantastic Voyage isn't just a retro thrill ride. It's a map of the future, drawn with Technicolor ink and powered by pure imagination. Next time you hear about a new medical breakthrough, remember, sometimes the future really is just a fantastic voyage away. The Day the Earth Caught Fire, 1961. Before climate change was a headline and heat wave meant more than an annoying summer, the day the Earth caught fire threw audiences into the ultimate disaster scenario, a planet knocked off its axis, spiraling toward the sun, all because two superpowers played chicken with nuclear bombs. Forget the Hollywood gloss. This British sci-fi gem is gritty, sweaty, and relentless. The action unfolds in the smoky chaos of a London newsroom, packed with real journalists and ink-stained printing presses. When scientists realize that nuclear tests by the US and USSR have literally shifted Earth's tilt, the world descends into a panic of boiling rivers, endless drought, and doomsday headlines. Director Val Guest turns the city into a sunburnt pressure cooker, using yellow filters and painted landmarks to create an atmosphere that's both surreal and frighteningly believable. The script doesn't pull any punches. It's blunt, sometimes cynical, and refuses to give easy answers. The iconic ending, a newsroom preparing two versions of the next day's paper, World Saved or World Doomed, leaves the fate of humanity hanging. No cheesy rescue, no miracle fix, just the brutal uncertainty that comes from playing with forces you can't control. Sound familiar? With today's headlines about environmental collapse and political finger-pointing, The Day the Earth Caught Fire reads like a prophecy disguised as a thriller. It's a scorching reminder that when you gamble with nature, the house always wins. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, 1964. Picture yourself stranded on a red, desolate planet with only a monkey for company and the odds stacked higher than the Martian mountains. Sounds like a Lost Cause fantasy, right? Wrong. Robinson Crusoe on Mars is the ultimate survival blueprint, a movie that played out the harsh realities of planetary colonization decades before Elon Musk made it his personal crusade. Kit Draper, a lone astronaut, is left to figure out oxygen, water, shelter, and sanity with no help in sight. But here's the kicker. The filmmakers didn't just make stuff up. They hired NASA consultants, shot on the scorching dunes of Death Valley, and got real about the dangers: solar radiation, food scarcity, the need to wring oxygen from Martian rocks, the process Draper uses to mine oxygen out of minerals. Not just sci-fi, but a real technique that scientists would later explore as crucial for future Mars missions. The film ditches the rubber suit Martians for a gritty, plausible struggle with elements and solitude. Draper's daily grind, rationing water, building makeshift gear, using raw ingenuity is the same stuff astronauts train for today. Apollo 12's commander Pete Conrad even screened it for his crew as a what not to do lesson in survival. While Robinson Crusoe on Mars didn't break box office records, it became a cult hit with scientists and sci-fi nerds. If you're dreaming of a life on Mars, this movie saw the future first, and it's not for the faint of heart. Sometimes, the hardest frontier isn't space, it's surviving yourself. Seconds, 1966. Ready for a head trip? Seconds is the ultimate mind-bender, a film that dared to ask, what if you could erase your life and start over with a new face, a new name, a new everything? In 1966, this wasn't just radical, it was chilling. Today, it feels like an early blueprint for identity theft, plastic surgery mania, and our obsession with reinvention. John Frankenheimer's film stars Rock Hudson as a disillusioned middle-aged man who signs up with a shadowy company offering a one-way ticket to a brand new existence. The process is surgical, secretive, and loaded with consequences. You die, get reconstructed, and emerge as someone else, a second chance, or maybe a second prison. Seconds plays with paranoia and dread, using weird angles, warped lenses, and real-life beach party footage that make you feel like you're the one losing grip on reality. What's eerie is how much this film saw coming. The rise of identity hopping, the lure and danger of cosmetic surgery, and the idea that starting over isn't always the dream it seems. It even anticipated industries built on selling reinvention, whether through surgery, tech, or digital profiles. Rock Hudson, breaking away from his romantic comedy image, called it the most challenging role of his career. Audiences didn't know what to make of it at the time, but critics and directors later praised it for its boldness and insight. Seconds isn't just sci-fi, it's a cautionary tale for anyone who's ever wished for a reset button. Sometimes a second chance is the scariest future of all. First Men in the Moon, 1964. Imagine Apollo astronauts landing on the moon, only to find a British flag already planted and a note dated 1899. That's the wild premise of First Men in the Moon, a film that combined Victorian adventure with a surprisingly accurate take on lunar exploration, years before the real space race hit its stride. Based on H.G. Wells's story, the film follows a quirky inventor and his unlikely crew as they use an anti-gravity substance to build a brass spacecraft and blast off for the moon. But it's not all steampunk spectacle. The lunar landscape is rendered with such care and imagination that even James Cameron would later cite it as a direct influence on his own otherworldly visions. Ray Harryhausen's stop-motion moon creatures are both bizarre and believable, turning every cave and shadow into a potential threat. Here's the kicker. The film's concept of international competition for the moon, the technical details of space travel, and even the idea of finding strange life below the lunar surface foreshadowed real discoveries and debates about lunar exploration. The plots, what if we're not first? Anxiety mirrors the Cold War space race, while its practical effects still hold up against today's CGI overload. First Men in the Moon didn't just entertain, it laid out a world where science, politics, and national pride collide in outer space. It's a playful prophecy wrapped in British charm, but its message is clear. The race to explore and claim the unknown is far from over. Quartermass in the Pit, 1967. What if humanity's deepest fears and wildest myths weren't just legends, but memories buried in our DNA by visitors from another world? Quartermass and the Pit isn't just a slice of Hammer horror, it's a full-blown sci-fi bombshell that predicted everything from ancient aliens to the genetic manipulation debates that dominate headlines today. The story kicks off when a construction crew uncovers a mysterious object beneath London's streets. Scientists investigate and discover fossilized remains of insect-like Martians, along with hints that these aliens tinkered with early humans, planting the seeds of psychic powers, race memory, and mass hysteria. The film's climax, with a ghostly Martian presence hovering over a city gripped by panic, is still one of cinema's most unsettling visions. But here's the wild part. Quartermass and the Pit dropped its ancient astronaut theory a full year before Chariots of the Gods made it pop culture famous. Its influence is everywhere, from John Carpenter's horror to Spielberg's face-melting Raiders finale. The practical effects, done on a shoestring budget, still pack a punch. This isn't just a monster movie. It's a smart, paranoid meditation on what makes us human, what we inherit from the past, and how easily fear can turn us against each other. If you've ever wondered if our greatest terrors are really just memories we can't shake, this film saw it all coming. X. The Man with X-Ray Eyes, 1963. What if you could see through anything? Walls, skin, secrets, the very fabric of reality. X. The Man with X-Ray Eyes takes that fantasy and turns it into a technicolor nightmare, delivering a warning about curiosity gone wild and the double-edged sword of human innovation. Ray Milland plays Dr. James Xavier, a scientist desperate to push past the limits of human sight. His invention, eye drops that give him the ability to see in X-ray vision. At first, it's a medical miracle. He diagnoses illnesses, sees through lies, and becomes a celebrity in the process. But as his power grows, so does the darkness. He sees too much, hidden flaws in people, secrets best left buried, and eventually sights so terrifying they threaten his sanity. The film's visual effects were a low-budget marvel, with practical tricks that still impress. Painted veins, kaleidoscopic lenses, and distorted shots make you question what's real. The movie never lets you off the hook, forcing you to ask, what would you do if you saw the truth beneath every surface? X. The man with X-ray eyes predicted a world obsessed with medical imaging, constant surveillance, and the quest for hidden knowledge. It's a story about boundaries, how far is too far, and what happens when you finally break through. Sometimes the real danger isn't what you can't see, it's what you can't unsee. The Last Man on Earth, 1964. Before pandemic movies were a whole genre, The Last Man on Earth stared down the apocalypse and didn't blink. Starring Vincent Price at his haunted best, this American-Italian hybrid dared to show a world emptied by plague, where the only survivor stalks the lonely streets by day and barricades his home against the monsters outside by night. Sound uncomfortably familiar? Here's the kicker. This isn't just zombie horror. Adapted from Richard Matheson's novel, it's an early, eerily prescient meditation on global pandemics, social isolation, and the psychological toll of surviving in a world that suddenly stopped making sense. The creatures in the film, half vampire, half ghoul, are really metaphors for how quickly us versus them becomes the new normal. Wide shots of deserted cities, relentless monotony, and Price's desperate routines look like a dry run for every post-apocalyptic tale that followed, from I Am Legend to 28 Days Later. But this one did it first, decades before viral outbreaks and lockdowns became part of our vocabulary. The Last Man on Earth isn't about cheap scares. It's about how we cope, adapt, and sometimes lose ourselves in the face of disaster. In a world where headlines keep talking about new viruses, sudden isolation, and societal breakdown, this old-school thriller feels less like fiction and more like a warning shot across history's bow. The Time Travelers, 1964. Step through a laboratory mirror and straight into a ruined future. The Time Travelers is a movie that didn't just toy with the idea of time travel, it forecast the anxieties that come with it. Ecological collapse, automation, and the weird loop where tech outpaces our humanity. The setup is simple. A group of scientists, experimenting with a portal to the future, stumble into a world devastated by nuclear war. Civilization is toast, mutants roam the wilderness, and the last remnants of humanity hide underground, sustained by high-tech marvels and haunted by what's been lost. What sets this film apart? Its fearless dive into the domino effect of progress, how the very inventions meant to save us can end up trapping us. The Time Travelers shows humanoid robots doing the dirty work, elaborate control rooms filled with blinking lights, and a society where survival hinges on technology's fragile thread. It's one of the first films to imagine a self-contained, fully automated environment keeping people alive after everything else has failed. A blueprint for everything from BioShock to the space station scenes in Interstellar. But here's the mindbender. The scientists eventually realize their trip through time isn't a one-way street. The loops and paradoxes pile up, reflecting the real-life challenges of keeping our creations under control. The film's ending throws its characters, and us, into an endless cycle, asking if maybe, just maybe, the future is already written. If you think our obsession with artificial intelligence and technological safety nets is a modern problem, think again. The Time Travelers was already sounding the alarm before we even realized the clock was ticking. The Andromeda Strain, 1969. A meteor falls, a microbe hitchhikes, and suddenly the fate of humanity hinges on a laboratory lockdown. The Andromeda Strain, produced right at the tail end of the 1960s, predicted the rise of viral outbreaks, biosecurity fears, and the cold, clinical world of pandemic response that's become all too real. Adapted from Michael Crichton's breakout novel, this film didn't just invent the killer virus thriller, it nailed the procedures, paranoia, and high-tech drama that come with trying to contain the unknown. A team of scientists, sealed in a sterile underground facility, races against time to understand and neutralize an alien microorganism before it wipes out entire towns. What sets the Andromeda Strain apart is its realism. The filmmakers insisted on actual scientific advisors, accurate procedures, and a set design so convincing it influenced real-life lab construction. The multi-level biocontainment facility, with its airlocks and decontamination chambers, is now standard in today's virology labs. This movie didn't just scare audiences, it educated them. The language of outbreaks, containment, and mutation entered pop culture and public policy alike. In the age of COVID-19 and rapid response science, the Andromeda Strain looks less like fantasy and more like a blueprint. If you've ever watched scientists in hazmat suits on the news and wondered where the playbook came from, look no further. The future was already written, reel by reel. Village of the Damned, 1960. Small-town England, sleepy streets, cozy cottages, and, wait for it, a blackout that leads to the birth of a dozen ice-cold, telepathic children who can read your every thought and bend you to their will. Village of the Damned is a quiet nightmare that predicted our deepest fears about genetics, eugenics, and what happens when science races ahead of our ethics. The story begins with everyone in Midwich suddenly knocked out for hours. When they wake, every woman of childbearing age is mysteriously pregnant. The children that follow, blonde, beautiful, and completely, terrifyingly alien. They grow at a freakish rate, learn at lightning speed, and soon reveal powers that make them both a scientific curiosity and a threat no one can control. What's truly ahead of its time is the film's willingness to wrestle with the ethics of manipulating life, breeding for perfection, and the chilling consequences of unchecked experimentation. The kids aren't monsters, they're the next stage, engineered by forces unknown, a biological leap that no one asked for. Decades before debates about cloning, CRISPR, and designer babies hit the news, Village of the Damned was already asking the tough questions. How far would you go to control the future? And what if the future decides to control you instead? Sometimes the most terrifying invasion is the one that comes from inside your own DNA. The Damned 1963. Sunshine, beaches, and government secrets, The Damned lures you in with a promise of British holiday fun, then hits you with a punchline so dark it'll stick with you long after the credits roll. This isn't your average sci-fi flick. It's a chilling prophecy about radiation, government cover-ups, and the lengths to which a society might go to survive its own mistakes. The story follows an American tourist, a biker gang, and a desperate chase that ends in a restricted military area. There, beneath the cliffs, a group of children are being held in isolation. They're not ordinary kids. They're radioactive, the products of a secret government experiment designed to breed a generation capable of surviving nuclear fallout. What's prophetic here is the film's cold-eyed view of authority, secrecy, and the willingness to sacrifice a few for the supposed good of all. The Damned explores what happens when governments tinker with genetics and radiation without telling the world, or the victims. The children, raised in confinement and trained to accept their fate, become the ultimate symbol of innocence manipulated by power. The movie's black and white photography and uneasy tone amplify the sense of doom. Decades before whistleblowers and declassified files became news, The Damned was already digging into what governments might hide in the name of safety. In a world where the aftershocks of nuclear science and cover-ups still make headlines, this forgotten gem was more right than anyone wanted to admit. So, the next time you scroll your phone, fret over the news, or marvel at a tech breakthrough, just remember, Sci-Fi saw it coming. These movies weren't just entertainment, they were warnings, prophecies, and sometimes accidental blueprints for the real world. Which of these mind-bending predictions blew you away? Drop your pick in the comments, hit subscribe for more cinematic time travel, and keep your eyes peeled. The next impossible future might already be lurking in an old movie reel.